Summer 1969. America was a nation holding its breath, a country divided by war, changing by the day. But for 3 days in August, on a quiet dairy farm in upstate New York, the world turned its eyes to a generation that dared to imagine something different. This wasn't just a music festival. It was an idea, a messy, chaotic, beautiful idea that 500,000 people brought to life. It was billed as an Aquarian exposition, 3 days of peace and music. We know it simply as Woodstock. The name itself feels like a myth now, a legend from a distant time. We think of the music, the mud, the iconic images. But the real story of Woodstock isn't just about what happened on stage. It's a story of a near disaster that became a miracle, a story of how a traffic jam turned into a temporary city, and how a generation, for one brief moment, showed the world a different way to be. And it was all started by 4 young men, none of them over 27. Michael Lang, the visionary with the festival experience, Artie Kornfeld, a music executive, and John Roberts and Joel Roseman, 2 Ivy League grads with the capital. They were entrepreneurs, dreamers, maybe a little naive. Their initial plan was to host the festival in Wallkill, New York. They'd sold over 180,000 tickets in advance. The stages were being built. It was happening. Then, just a month before the show, the town of Wallkill pulled their permit. Panic set in. All that money, all those tickets, and now no location. The dream was on the verge of collapsing. The news spread like wildfire. Woodstock was canceled. But Michael Lang refused to let it die. He took to the air in a helicopter, desperately searching the rolling hills of the Hudson Valley for a new home. He found it in Bethel, New York, a 600-acre dairy farm owned by a man named Max Yaska. Yaska was a middle-aged farmer, a conservative man, not a hippie by any stretch. But he saw the desperation, and he believed in the kids. He made a deal. Woodstock was back on. But now they had less than a month to transform his quiet fields into a venue for what would become one of the largest gatherings in human history. They never stood a chance of being ready. Not really. The organizers had planned for 200,000 people at most. But the word was out. This was the event. They started coming and coming. By Friday, August 15th, the roads leading to Bethel were completely paralyzed. Cars were abandoned for miles. It was a river of people, a human tide flowing toward the music, with or without a ticket. The fences, if you could even call them that, were a lost cause. The ticket booths were overwhelmed. A decision was made not with a formal announcement, but by simple, undeniable reality. Woodstock was now a free festival. You didn't need a ticket. You just had to get there. This single fact changed everything. It was no longer a commercial venture. It was a phenomenon. And then came the rain. Not just a summer shower, but a relentless, field-churning downpour that turned the entire festival into a sea of mud. The weather, the food shortages, the overwhelmed medical tents, by any normal standard. This was a disaster. But something else was happening. A community was being born out of the chaos. The music had to start, but many of the scheduled performers were stuck in the traffic. The festival opened with Richie Havens. He played every song he knew, and then he played them again. After hours on stage, in a moment of pure improvisation, he started strumming a chord and chanting one word: freedom. It was the perfect, unplanned anthem for a gathering that had taken on a life of its own. As the weekend unfolded, the stage became a proving ground for legends. A then unknown band called Santana took the stage on Saturday afternoon. Fueled by nervous energy, Carlos Santana delivered a blistering, hypnotic performance of Soul Sacrifice that announced his arrival to the world. Later, the raw, gut-wrenching power of Janis Joplin's voice echoed across the fields, a sound of pure, unapologetic emotion. The Who took the stage in the pre-dawn hours of Sunday, delivering a furious, powerhouse set. As the sun began to rise behind them, Pete Townsend famously greeted the dawn during See Me, Feel Me, creating one of the festival's most enduring images. Then there was Joe Cocker, a gravel-voiced singer from Sheffield, England. In the midst of a Sunday afternoon thunderstorm, He seized the stage with a performance of, "With a little help from my friends, so convulsive and soulful it seemed to shake the very sky." But the final word belonged to Jimi Hendrix. He was scheduled to close the festival on Sunday night, but due to delays, he didn't take the stage until 9 a.m. on Monday morning. The crowd had dwindled from 500,000 to maybe 30,000. But those who stayed witnessed history. Hendrix, alone on that massive stage, took America's national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, and deconstructed it. Through the feedback and distortion of his guitar, you could hear the sounds of a nation in conflict, the chaos, the beauty, and the pain of the Vietnam era, all channeled through one instrument. As historic as the music was, the real story of Woodstock was happening out there, in the crowd, in the mud. For 3 days, this mass of people became what the organizers called a city in the country. The basic necessities of life were scarce. The New York State Thruway was closed. The governor considered calling in the National Guard. Yet, there was almost no reported violence. A communal spirit took over. People shared their food, their water, their blankets. A commune from New Mexico, known as the Hog Farm, set up a free kitchen and gently guided people on bad trips. Doctors and nurses volunteered their time. This was the peace and love ethos, not as a slogan, but as a practical necessity. It was a social experiment on a scale never seen before. On Sunday, the man who owned the land, Max Yaska, was brought on stage. He looked out at the sea of faces, this counterculture army that had camped on his fields. And he didn't see a disaster. He saw hope. He said, and I quote, "The important thing that you've proven to the world is that 500,000 kids can get together and have 3 days of fun and music and have nothing but fun and music, and I God bless you for it." When the music finally stopped on Monday, the exodus began. They left behind a field of debris, a lifetime of memories, and a question. What did it all mean? For many, Woodstock felt like the peak of the 1960s dream, a beautiful, fleeting moment of unity. But the road ahead was rocky. Just 4 months later, the Altamont Speedway Free Festival would end in violence, a dark bookend to the Woodstock dream. But the legacy of Woodstock endured. It wasn't the dawn of a new age, but it was a powerful demonstration of one. It created the blueprint for every major music festival that followed. More than that, it became a cultural touchstone, a symbol that for all the division and anger in the world, people were still capable of coming together, of taking care of each other, of creating a moment of peace. It was a ripple in time, whose concentric circles still expand today. Could it happen again? In our modern world of social media, corporate sponsorships, and heightened security, it's hard to imagine. Perhaps that's why the story is so important. It reminds us of a time when 500,000 people, against all odds, gathered in a muddy field not just to listen to music, but to listen to each other. And for 3 remarkable days, they created a kind of magic that has never been forgotten.